Hello, today me, Robert Mosse, and my partner Mitch are going to be talking about returned soldiers. After World War I, many thousands of soldiers returned from the battlefields of Europe. Many were emotionally or physically unstable and went into intensive care for the rest of their lives. Others found that they were pitied, but ultimately they were outcasts in a society that just wanted to forget the war and move on. The returned soldiers had to carve a new position for themselves in society, to rediscover a peaceful lifestyle and settle down in the Australia that had been promised, a land fit for heroes. It was not always easy for the soldiers to reintegrate into society, as many were mentally damaged. Billy Hughes, the Little Digger, had represented the Australian diggers at the Paris Peace Conference in 1919, fighting for Australia's contribution in the war to be recognised by the great international powers. His determination to stand up to such international heavyweights as the US President Woodrow Wilson gained Hughes the deep respect of the soldiers. This respect was mutual, as Hughes felt a strong sense of obligation to provide the soldiers with a stable country and a job. He optimistically described Australia as a land fit for heroes. The immediate concern for the government was guaranteeing employment for the diggers. Following the end of the war, over 250,000 soldiers returned to Australia. Diggers found work with varying success, although only initially 13,000 returned soldiers found themselves unemployed. This number steadily increased throughout the 1920s. For the majority of the decade, unemployment was over 5%. Soldiers found that in their absence, women had charged into the workplace, taking jobs usually occupied by men. Women worked as effectively as men and were paid half the wage of a man. Employers were not always eager to fire their female employees in favour of returned soldiers, particularly when few soldiers had the skills needed for basic work. A lack of skills proved a disadvantage for soldiers keen to return to the workforce. During the war, technology had progressed in leaps and bounds. Many factories had been built, and work usually performed by unskilled labourers had been replaced by machines. Therefore, Australia seemed to be unprepared for the sudden influx of new workers. There was no job security, public assistance, or any guarantee that the diggers would be able to find employment once they returned home and demobilised. That is, left the army for civilian life. Soldiers who could not find employment began to demand financial assistance and support from the government. Soldiers who did find employment soon grew disillusioned with the poor working conditions and pace, and so joined the various unions for support and representation. A small number of soldiers even joined the fledgling Australian Communist Party, which campaigned for a more socialist government. They were influenced by the Communist Party that had come to power in Russia and was gaining influence in Europe. Overall, our research that we have conducted has proved that that during the 1920s it was very hard for soldiers to reintegrate back into society. However, some managed quite successfully and managed to live long, fulfilling lives. Thank you for listening.